a lot of familiar faces from a couple hours ago, or maybe an hour ago. If there is a sign-in sheet on the table by the door, if you didn't sign it when you came in, do so before you leave, so I have a record of who's here this evening. Right now, I'd like to ask everyone to rise and face the flag. And Greg, would you lead us in with the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, as advertised, at this point, we'll open a public hearing. This is for possible town acquisition of Green Mountain Road and Valley Pass Road within the Mountain View Estates subdivision. At the inspection that took place just a short while ago, I read the notice of inspection. The notice is different, I guess, as far as for the inspection and for the hearing itself. Just right now, keep the right document for you to read going into it.
You want to reread that?
I can reread this if you think it's the right document. I guess it works.
We do have Jim Carroll on the
yeah, I think this covers it. Jim, I got this from you, so let me read this going in. This is notice of inspection and public hearing regarding the dedication, acceptance, and classification and laying out of roads known as Green Mountain Road, Valley Pass, lying within Mountain View Estates, also known as Green Mountain Estates. The Town of Manchester Select Board hereby gives notice pursuant to 19 Vermont statutes annotated sections 701, 709 of a public hearing and inspection to consider the dedication, acceptance, classification, and laying out of the following private roads within the Mountain View Estates subdivision, also known as Green Mountain Estates, hereinafter referred to as MVE subdivision. Number one, the entirety of a common and existing private road known as Green Mountain Road, centered on a 50-foot strip of land through the MVE subdivision from its intersection with Richville Road on the north to its intersection with Richville Road on the south. Number two, the entirety of a common and existing private road known as Valley Pass, centered on a 50-foot strip of land through MVE subdivision from its intersection with Green Mountain Road to the north, to its intersection with Green Mountain Road on the south. We held an inspection of both roads earlier at 5 o'clock, and then the public hearing is right now, 7 o'clock, on August 6th, today's date. Reference is hereby made to an agreement to dedicate and accept common roads, common water service, and sewer collection systems, and related easements at Mountain View Estates, also known as Green Mountain Estates subdivision, dated September 22nd, 2023, which sets forth certain terms and conditions relating to the dedication, acceptance, and classification and laying out of Green Mountain Road and Valley Pass, a copy of which is available upon request at the town office.
We do have a large copy over there of Doug's survey results.
So to lead into the discussion on this, many of the people, almost all of the people that are here in attendance were at the inspection that happened earlier. We did have some comments and noted some areas of concern relative to drainage. As I mentioned at the inspection, there was no minutes being record of any conversations that took place at that particular meeting. So now during the public hearing would be the time to get things entered into the record as far as concerns and comments. Do you want to, the notice pretty much leads us in. Is there anything else that needs to be said?
No, you can ask Jim if he wants to weigh in.
I think you just asked him. sounds like a good plan, thank you.
Is everybody hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So to start with, my name is,
The wonders of modern technology. That,
What was the name of that TV show? We had a guest today.
I think we lost Jim. I think we lost Jim completely. I'm not sure, but we did have a few lead-in comments.
Maybe you could turn his video off so it's a better voice audible.
Could be.
Still talking. Still charging.
It's just let him know that we lost him just as he was about to introduce himself. What's that, Doug? Oh, okay.
Tell him to take off his, remove the video, just have him be without video.
Yeah. Yeah, we have, we've used Jim Carroll quite a bit over the years. We have a long-standing relationship with him as an attorney. He's been involved with them for quite some time.
Or you could have in the form of a public comment.
Okay, we can do that. Are there any comments, first of all, up here at the table? Before I don't see anybody clamoring to say anything, so I will, I'll open it up to public comments if anybody wants to say anything. I can kind of lead into the discussion. Victoria Silsby has her hand up.
Mr. Bailey, select chair, is it all right if I bring up two issues simultaneously, or do you want me to raise my hand a second time?
Are these issues relative to the public hearing that we're conducting right now, relative to the roads at Green Mountain Estates?
No.
No,
That's my bad.
okay,
So-
let me just run briefly through the agenda here. We are opening with a public hearing, which we're conducting right now, and then the public comments is the next agenda item after we dispose of this hearing.
That's fine, that's fair, I heard public comments, so I raised my hand. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, my bad. These would be public comments relative to
They
the,
were both bad items.
okay.
All right, hand is,
When we looked at the roads today, we're all fairly familiar with the layout over there, and there's not a whole lot new going on. Some of the discussions that I had with the residents that live there related to concerns over changing the profile or the elevation of the street by paving it. That it might exacerbate some of the drainage issues that are going on there. So I know people want that to be part of the record here, and I just wanted to, there might be some discussion over specific places where the request may be to actually lower the road, the existing profile of the road, so that the final paved surface is actually lower than what the road is now. I heard quite a few of those comments, and bearing in mind that the normal situation would be for the road to be crowned and elevated with swales on the side that would collect water and dissipate it over time, but we have it's a very flat subdivision, and there's not a lot of room for water to sit around waiting to be absorbed on one hand, and then the other hand, of course, is the occasional flooding, which seems to be more prevalent than it used to be. I will take note that in the context of walking around and talking to people and talking to other select board members, that this last storm that we had on Wednesday, which by my rain gauge was over 3 inches at the farm, there was some high water around town, but that particular area didn't seem to be affected too badly by it. So that was encouraging. But if anybody has any comments at this point, I'd love to get it into the record. Yeah, Deb, yeah, just so that people that are on the Zoom can hear you, there's a microphone on the podium. I'm sorry about that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm getting several reports that the audio from GNAT is inaudible. We can't hear anything that's going on. Sorry. Can you hear?
Yeah, you're good. Be a small apron provided just to make the transition into the driveway smooth, but there may still be some puddling at the end of the transitional apron, depending on the configuration of the driveway. I saw two situations where the road was higher than existing garages, and that looked like there could be a significant issue there. When the water comes off the road, it would wind up right beside the garage. So it exists now, so the issue already exists. But the easy way to try to address that. I know in the way way that the water, when there's a flood, the way that the water moves through the development is different than it used to be because of one section of Green Mountain Road that's been raised. I pointed that out to me. And Jeff Williams is well aware of that.
Oh, you're talking about Green Mountain Road and Valley Path?
Yeah.
The elevation's been raised, it just makes a corner and goes down, settles on Valley Path, yeah.
Yeah. So, other comments, things that you'd like to get into the record on this? Everybody just wants to get it done.
Can we get it done before the weekend when another storm?
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna beat that. If we're gonna beat that one, hopefully yeah, come on.
Scott Casey, just to reiterate what you were going over about the level of the road. My house is at 263 Green Mountain Road. Talked to Jeff when he was over there. He said about taking product away from in front of my house, which is across the street from Sue's house, which is one of the driveways we were talking about. Because right now my lawn is basically below the road level. Okay. So any type of runoff will be flooding my front lawn and possibly into my basement. So, and he said that
would be a
in
problem.
that area that he was talking about taking some product out.
Yeah, and Scott,
I just wanted to get that.
like I said, under a normal situation, the road would be elevated down
Yeah.
around, and you wanna get the water off the road
Yeah.
into a swale beside it, like Ed was talking about.
Yeah,
But the trouble is, as flat as that is, if
that
the road's
area is
elevated,
flat.
and it's a flat shot all the way to your house and your basement, there's really no place to.
yeah, so that's why he was talking about taking some product out instead of adding 4 more inches
Yeah,
to take some out to, get a little bit lower. Plus, right now, that one of my driveways is where the front of the driveway, the water stands. We had some puddling there where you saw it was all dried out. But it puddles right there at the front of my driveway.
I did hear one comment during the course of the inspection, talking about that section of Green Mountain Road where it meets Valley Pass, and it's been elevated, was that actually that should be dropped down far enough so that could actually be a conduit
For water.
for water. I think we should look at that. It would have to still be crowned, so you don't get, so you don't get standing water in the middle of the road in the winter that could freeze and
Yeah.
cause a problem. I don't know if it would provide enough of a profile cross-section to handle the volume of water that comes down through there. It would handle some of it, but it may still spread on the lawns, but I'd be willing to take a look at it, or have somebody look at that and see if that's a viable.
But Jeff said something about being able to take some of the product out in that area.
Yeah, right in that area.
Right in that area.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted that on the record too.
Thank you, Scott.
Mr. Chairman, it's Jim Carroll.
Jim, welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry about the technology. I actually had to move upstairs. Get a little elevation. If it's all right, Mr. Chairman, a couple of points I'd just like to have placed on the record for the purposes of establishing, for the record for the purposes of this particular hearing. Because under the statute, under section 710, the board's job is to determine whether or not the acceptance and dedication of the roads and the laying out and what classification is appropriate is a question of what's in the public good, necessity, and convenience of the public and the folks that are served by this particular set of roads. That's kind of the standard that applies. And just from the basis of my more recent involvement in this, what has been about almost a 20-year history in connection with this particular development and the common roads and utilities there. From my perspective, I could see multiple reasons why accepting the roads would be in the best and public good and necessity and convenience of not only the people who reside and live at this particular subdivision, but also throughout town. mostly because at this particular point in time, there's no common basis or mechanism by which the maintenance and upkeep of these gravel roads has been put into place, notwithstanding about 20 years of litigation. Also, through dedication and acceptance, we'll be able to actually acquire the fee to these 50-foot strips. So the town, in addition to accepting the roads into its town highway system, will actually own the underlying land in connection with the 50-foot rights-of-way that abut these particular roads, as well as the common utilities that exist in the ground, which is going to position the town to provide for the better health, safety, and welfare of the community in general, as well as being able to control and provide better protection for nearby public water supplies and utility systems, and all the time securing some resources, the resources out of the estate necessary to upgrade these common roads and utilities to acceptable standards for Manchester. Last but not least, it's going to resolve an enormously long, complicated, and multiple appeal dispute equitably, I think, amongst all the parties that have any kind of stake in this particular situation. So I'm seeing this as being something that certainly the board could consider as part of this process as being in the public good, necessity, and convenience. In connection with all of that, just for the purposes of the record, a set of exhibits has been prepared for submission to the board, along with an exhibit list of documents that may be helpful to the board in actually reaching and drafting its report of findings, which will need to be in writing, signed by the board members, and recorded. And there are some 14 exhibits that have at this point been put before the board, which I think will be useful in the drafting process. One is the actual agreement that maybe you had referred to before, and that's referenced in the notice in connection with the agreement to dedicate and accept common roads, which have a lot of conditions attached to it, some of which still need to be fulfilled. So in moving forward with any approval of the acceptance and dedication of roads, it will be done, or I would recommend it be done, subject to completing all of the conditions under the agreement, and there are a few left to complete. In fact, this process is one of those conditions that we're hoping to accomplish in moving forward. There are also a whole set of orders out of the probate court from the probate division of the Bennington unit approving the estate's transfer of the roads, the common utilities, and also approving the agreement that had been signed between the town and the Hayes estates in the distribution of assets to the town for the purposes of upgrading the common utilities. Those are attached and put in the exhibits as well. Then there are the underlying primary surveys, which basically document the existence of these two roads and their locations. The town has recently retained the services of Deb Midhofer to verify those locations and that they are in keeping and more or less in existence on the ground as they were laid out in the original survey that pertained to this particular subdivision. There's also a title opinion and report that's been issued by Lonnie McClintock, who's an attorney who represented many of the Mountain View Estate property owners, was most familiar with the title. He has provided a title opinion in connection with the state's ability to transfer those assets into the town. And that has been provided as well. And that's about it. And I just wanted to make sure to put those items in the record. Those exhibits, I think there's paper copies, I believe, before you, but there are also electronic copies that are available to the board and obviously the public as well. I think I've said my piece, unless there are questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. I actually have one question for you based on information that came up during our inspection. Deb Midhofer was there, and I looked at some of the work that she's done, and she pointed out at 2 different locations, one on the southeast corner of Green Mountain Estates, where the actual traveled way of the road encroaches onto the inner radius to the point where it's on private property and outside of the right-of-way. The other is down on the intersection we were just talking about, the northern intersection of Green Mountain Road and Valley Pass, where Valley Pass touches the edge of the right-of-way. It looks like if we pave a 22-foot section, we could probably, in both cases, get the road well into the right-of-way without making huge changes to what's happening there. But I was wondering, I can remember at some point being told that the actual, over some period of time, the actual traveled portion of the road becomes the right-of-way. Do you know anything about any decisions that were made that would substantiate that perspective?
Well, Mr. Chairman, there is a statute that basically says that a traveled way, absent any other information or title information of record by way of either a deed or a highway layout, that the presumption is that the center of the traveled surface is the center of the right-of-way. If, however, there is other information from which it can be determined where a right-of-way was actually laid out, in the form, for instance, of surveys, such as we have, and other information, those would prevail in terms of the locations of the right-of-way. So to the extent that the traveled surface has in some ways either drifted or originally been laid out in a manner which, as I understand it, is a slight encroachment, it would probably be best to move that back within the right-of-way, absent any other arrangement with the landowner.
Thank you, that's been very helpful. It looks like that could be easily accomplished. The other helpful part of your presentation, going back historically, in the late 60s, early 70s, into the mid 70s, there was a lot of development in town, and the select board and town officials were pretty much accepting any private road once it was developed as a public road and making it part of the infrastructure of the town. In the mid to late 70s, there were a number of roads that came in that were sketchy at best, certainly weren't up to what we would consider to be town standards, even though we didn't have a standard at that time. We developed town standards for roads, and we kind of, at that point in time, in the very early 80s, decided that we weren't going to just categorically accept private roads, that it had to be to the benefit of the town to take the road, and the road had to be at town specs before we would accept it. And in my tenure on the board, which is over 40 years now, we haven't accepted a lot of roads. And as Doug will attest, and we started, I think you were on the select board when we started talking about this, but certainly have been on the water board ever since, and it's been a main topic of conversation. I was generally not in favor of accepting the road because of the policy that we had in place. But I think in the context of everything else, and the fact that there's 42 homes out there, I'm not discounting that. I mean, it's a big chunk of our community. But in the context of the water distribution in there, the sewer collection system, the town acquisition of those two being to the benefit of the community, this being an integral part of that whole agreement, I find it to be not a precedent-setting situation at all, that it makes sense for the town to do all this, have it all. So I've come around on this, as Doug will attest, to supporting it. And, you know, now we're just ironing out the details. But I wanted everybody to be generally aware that the town is not in the business of accepting private roads, right and left. On my way here from my house this evening, I passed 11 private roads in a 2-mile journey. And everybody that's on those roads would love to have the town take over their road. That's just in that one small section of town. There's a lot of private roads in town. And it would be a huge burden for the town to take on that extra infrastructure. But in this particular case, I find it to be unique and have, and in the best interest of the town to do so. And I think, Jim, your comments helped to solidify that. Other comments from people who are here? This is your chance to have an impact and get it into the record. Hearing none, we really have a couple of options. My suggestion would be to close the hearing. If we feel that we've got all the testimony that we feel in order to make a decision on this. The first option, of course, would be to close the hearing, take it under advisement, and make a decision at a later date. The second option would be to close the hearing and actually take action on what we discussed here.
I'm prepared.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but if I could just add to that, the statute does require written findings from the select board that need to be made within 60 days. That's the outside limit, and it's certainly true that this can be done a lot faster than 60 days, assuming that the select board is all in agreement. So I do think the options would be to either just close the hearing, begin the deliberation process. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, so the board is entitled to deliberate either as a board or through the exchange of draft reports that, once approved, could get signed by the entirety of the board without the need for another hearing. That once it is signed and issued, that becomes the decision, the report of findings. That will then be served on all of the parties who are provided with notice and recorded, which would then constitute the dedication and acceptance, conditioned on the completion of the other arrangements that need to happen in the agreement. So you can either, I think, under these circumstances, simply close the hearing and go into deliberative session with the idea of issuing the report, or if the board is inclined to think that they're in favor of accepting this, to direct either myself or the town manager with my assistance to provide a written draft report for its consideration, approving of the dedication and acceptance. And there's one other item, which is there's some discussion of the classification or some understanding of what the board might want by way of classification, if its inclination here tonight is to direct us to prepare a report accepting the dedication and acceptance. I hope I made myself clear.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And should the discussion regarding classification take place in the context of the public hearing, or is that something we can determine after the hearing is closed?
You can determine that after the hearing is closed. Okay. You can do deliberation.
We do have a motion that I think you've vetted, should we decide to go forward affirmatively on this, that one of the board members is prepared to make, which would, I believe, would let the people know that we're acting in an affirmative matter, but starting the process of creating the findings and the decision. So we'll take the.
Heidi was said that she was in favor of that.
Yeah, I think
I'm in favor of that.
at this point, Greg, why don't you float a motion then?
All right, here we go. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move, we close the hearing regarding the dedication, acceptance, laying out, and classification private roads, Green Mountain Road and Valley Pass Road, and take the matter under advisement for further deliberations with instructions to the town manager and with the assistance of council to draft a report of findings for the select board's review, approving the dedication, acceptance, and laying out of the roads as Class 3 town highways, conditioned on the completion of all requirements and obligations under the agreement.
It's moved and seconded. Under discussion, Mr. Carroll, does that meet the concerns that you raised?
It absolutely does. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So is there any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
That appears to be 5-0. It is 5-0, and we're moving forward.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Appreciate your tolerance of my.
Well, we hope you're feeling better, and glad you were able to come back and attend the meeting with us, because it was very helpful.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Is it too late to ask a question?
Never too late, go ahead.
My question is, now you're saying it's a class 3 road?
We
I
didn't
thought
say
you
it,
were
no.
joking. You did.
We haven't made that determination yet.
Well, he just said it in his little statement.
Well,
That's why I was wondering, it's already
Yeah.
been decided, it's gonna be class 3, because you said you could discuss it after,
yeah,
but it's written in the motion.
yeah.
So is it supposed to be a class 3 road or not? I mean,
That was
you're-
our expectation, was that it would be a.
and what is that considered, when it's considered a class 3 road? I don't know who I'm asking.
Yeah, Jim,
You want me to respond to that, Mr. Chair?
yes, thank you.
Yeah, so the motion as passed is really a direction for the town manager with my assistance, if you'll have me, to put a report of findings together, a draft, for approval by the full select board, with the direction that it be drafted in such a manner as to approve the acceptance, the dedication, laying out of the road, and also to include an expectation that they would sign and finally approve of it as being a class 3 road, which, given basically my understanding of the statutes and the classification system, is and would appear to be the most appropriate classification for both of these roads in Manchester's highway system. That motion is really a direction to say, draft something and bring it back to us to consider, which approves of all of those things. The motion that's been passed is really more a direction to us to provide those findings. The decision itself, made by the select board, really won't be made until the majority, in this case, the entirety of the select board, signs that document. So it is entirely possible we could come back with a draft, and the select board could go into deliberations and decide, no, we want it to be a different class of some sort, and provide different directions. I think the motion was framed in this way to, I think, give some assurance that, as indicated tonight by the vote, that there is a predisposition on behalf of the select board to approve this acceptance and dedication and directions to prepare a report that says so. Is that clear?
Yeah, thank you. The question was, what's the difference between a
Class 3, class 2, class 1, I don't know what roads
Class 1 and class 2 are primarily arterial roads that serve general transportation of the public. Class 3 would be more of a neighborhood road like that generally is used by the people that live in that area. Class 4 is a town road, but it's not maintained by the town. There's no maintenance obligation. So the town would, the class 1, 2, and 3 all have the same maintenance obligation from the town. Class 4 is closer to a trail. But it's because of the neighborhood primarily serves the neighborhood, not the general public in their going through town. You concur with that?
I do. It has to do also with volume and type of road being built. It's obviously this road is class 3.
So, we've moved on from this, we've taken action. The next agenda item would be public comments. Victoria, this is your chance to chime in. The public comments section is for anything that you want to talk about that's germane to this meeting, but not on the agenda. It's not listed on the agenda. If you want to bring it up, you may. And Victoria, are you prepared at this point to make your comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple weeks ago, I was really pleased to see that the town has made concerted efforts to repaint the center line on many of the roads throughout town. I'm wondering, and what other painting might be scheduled for the famous or infamous intersection of Beach and Barnumville. So, to Mr. Cutler, I know that he has really had some insight as to next steps and needs of this intersection, and one was to repaint and clarify the lanes and the stopping points at that intersection, which means white stripes and possible railroad markings. The other way to look at this is that the sooner this intersection's safety is increased, then the less you're going to hear from me.
Okay.
I won't be that continual thorn in your side. I think I opened this conversation in October of 2023. And, you know, it's what, 9 months later, 10 months later, we're still having this conversation.
Yeah, the difficulty in the physical layout of that intersection is there's a few problems.
Yeah.
And of course,
Ivan, you and I both have had this conversation.
Yeah, but it's the proximity to the railroad tracks is one. There's a huge expanse of pavement there. And the stopping points and stopping lines for anyone who's traveling on Barnumville Road are pretty clear and pretty easy to tell. I don't think anybody follows the yellow line if they're coming south on Beach and they're turning east on Barnumville Road. Nobody goes all the way out to the end and makes their turn. They cut in on it. And I'm going to finish what I'm saying, Victoria. There's been conversations of perhaps somehow creating an island. Here's the problem with that. That whole intersection is sloped toward the center of the paved portion, and there's a drain in the center, in the middle of the intersection on Beach Street, which would make it really hard to accommodate some kind of an island to direct people around it without causing a drainage issue there. So there are a number of problems. I know when I'm turning left from Beach onto Barnumville to go toward my car, I go to the end of that yellow stripe and then make the left turn like you should. And when I do that, 1, 2, or 3 people are all passing me on the inside thinking that I'm going west on Barnumville, but what I'm really doing is following the road. So I see the problem on a regular basis, And it's gonna take somebody smarter than I to figure out how to address that.
I'm just thinking about the other.
I really appreciate the historical perspective, recounting of the historical perspective, because when I opened this conversation, Ivan, in October of last year, you shared these very sentiments. So I'm well aware, because I too am like you. I drive that intersection almost daily. But my question is, and maybe it's my misunderstanding, but at previous times when I've been at these meetings bringing up this intersection, there has been an indication of at least repainting the white stopping lines. And as far as my eyesight is indicating, the beach portion of the intersection could do with not just repainting the white stripes, but painting some white stripes. And I agree, Ivan, I too have been passed. I too counted 8 cars coming from the direction of your property towards Manchester. 8 cars in a row made a right-hand turn onto Beach the other day without stopping. 2 door septic trucks came from Beach, making left-hand turns as though they were going up past your property. Are we going to wait for another accident at that intersection before something happens?
So Sylvia, I think you remember, or Victoria, sorry, yeah, I do that every once in a while because of Sylvia. Where is Sylvia?
I know, I really miss her. Is she okay?
I saw her the other day.
Yeah, I started driving the other day, but anyway.
I'm gonna rule that totally germane to the issue.
But what I was gonna say was, we did put in the new signs that indicate there was a stop ahead. I too saw some people recently going through on Beach Street, making that right turn without stopping. And my question to the town manager is, we did talk about doing some new bars, stop bars, and instead of actually putting in a physical island, could we paint an island that wouldn't interfere with the drainage? So paint some kind of, you know, oblong thing that's like an island that separates it, and at least we could try that. But I think we talked about the bars that need to be, the stop bars on, that we could do, I think.
Yeah.
And the signs, I think the signs are great. I mean, so these are signs that are well
Yes, but Mr. Cutler, to your point, and I appreciate the new signage, but you watched yourself drivers disregarding the new
I
signage.
did see it, and I also see people stopping. So as much, there's,
I'm gonna
but I just,
I'm gonna
wondering
take
if
charge
you
of the
could-
conversation, Victoria. I can't have you people just talking back and forth, carrying on a conversation. Comments will have to be directed to the chair, and I'll redistribute. Mr. Cutler's talking right now, and we'll let him finish his train of thought. And then the town manager may want to respond, and then if you have something to say, I'll let you chime in later. But
Yeah, my comment was directed, Mr. Chair, more towards the town manager to find out if that's something we can do, is repaint the stop bars and maybe paint an island that would not interfere with the drainage.
So we can repaint the stop bar, and if there isn't a stop bar at one of the intersections, we'll paint one. I don't know if we can just randomly paint islands.
Of course we can.
Check on what we can do there. And just as an FYI, the state hires the vendors to paint the center lines. And they come and go as they please. There's no direction, the state has no direction. But we'll redo the stop bars. We've got the stop signs in place, we have the pre-stop signs in place. We have an increased police presence there, and very little historical evidence of accidents.
yeah, and I want to. We used to have the stencils ourselves, putting in stop bars and that sort of thing. Do we still have those stencils?
We do.
Yeah.
It's more of an eyeball thing, but they do, yeah, we do the stop bar.
But like you say, the line striping
Well,
is done by
as soon as the
outside.
rain stops this week, or next, we stop by.
Or some century.
Okay, I think we spent enough time on this. We actually have done a lot about this, so we gotta get moving.
Yeah. Okay, we are moving, we're gonna do some more stuff, we're moving forward on that. Any other public comments? Mike?
My comment in the form of a question, Mr. Chairman. I recently noticed the for sale signs on the Depot Street property. And I wonder if you could update us. Has the property been sold? Are we collecting rent? Is anyone paying taxes?
Okay, three questions?
Yeah.
Sure, so the property is still for sale. We've had several interested parties and one offer, which was rejected for the lowball nature of it. But we have interested parties every week, and we are receiving rent for the J. Crew building. And
But not for the other two?
that's correct.
Yeah, correct.
And most of the interested parties now are looking at singular buildings, buying one at a time, which may be something we can consider in the near future. There's a possibility of allowing at least two of them separate.
So I think it was reported in a prior meeting that there was a contract or letter of agreement or something, and there was an objection to contamination. Has that issue been resolved?
It has. We've received a SMAC letter from the state.
Good, thank you.
The contamination issue was resolved, but the intent to purchase went away.
Got it.
Victoria, did you have one more question on a different subject? Not seeing it.
I can unmute now. I appreciate, Ivan, your diligence in following up with me. I'm all set at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there's no more public comments, we'll move into the regular agenda. We'll start with the approval of minutes from the select board meeting 7.
I have a change in one of those.
Okay.
It says that Greg and I were absent. I don't know, we were in fact here. I think I
And that was rectified,
I
yeah.
didn't see that. Okay.
Yeah. There was an update on that.
That was
I'll see that.
upgraded. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the select board minutes of 7/23/24.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Agenda item number 6 is Main Street traffic test results.
Okay, so in your packet you received test results that Jim Henderson of BCRC conducted for us. I think earlier in the summer we saw the results of the first half of that. The first half was placement of the speed data machine just north of Vermont Country Store, just prior to entering the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit. So the speed limit was still 35 at that particular spot. Backing up, speed limit is 25 to Barnumville intersection, and then increases to 35 there, and then goes to 45 just around the Vermont Country Store. So the result you see on that shows a high percentage of what they call enforceable violation, 84%. But the average speed is 39, just prior to it turning 45, which is not a major problem. On the other flip side, further down the road, as the speed limit continues at 45, just prior to increasing again, we put the next placement of the speed box between Hunter Park and North Road. So that speed limit was 45. The average speed there was 44. And so it had only 3% of enforceable violation, which was an interesting result. Fine. And so basically, really what we're seeing is an acceleration as people head out of town, anticipating the change in the speed limit. You know, the select board wanted to look at this earlier this year and started this process. Now we've got some hard data to look at. You could consider it further about extending the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit further down the road. But beyond that, it looks like there's not really an issue.
I have a hand up on Phil Snow.
Yeah, I would love to see that data because I live right across from the DMA on Main Street. The numbers don't hold up. I've got people doing 50 miles an hour in front of my house, and during rush hours particularly, it's at least 45 in front of my house, which is, and you see the speed sign where the bend is, where people are traditionally hitting that sign if they're braking, they're doing 42. If they're not braking, they're doing 45 or 50. So I see it every day. I see it from 7 a.m. in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, I hear it. You had a truck do 60 miles an hour down Main Street the other day into the bookstore. They're doing 60 miles an hour out of town in front of my house. So I've spent 6 years talking about this subject with the fact that trying to find a solution to move, there's a lot of solutions to speeding problems. Moving that traffic calming device further out, to where the 35 is instead of 25. Moving the 35 out, or moving the 25 out further down the road. Putting in entering residential area signs. Putting stripes in the road or the speed limit on the road, being on the road. There's a lot of solutions to help calm the traffic. Otherwise, I guess I have no solution other than to continue. Well, I haven't continued. I'll start calling the police and the police chief to get them down to enforce the speeding issues that are through this 35-mile-an-hour speed zone. Scott, I know we've talked about it. I've talked to prior and interim town managers for 6 years, and the speeding isn't getting any better. It's getting worse. So I request the select board to really consider some of those suggestions, including moving the 35 out, moving the 25 out, and doing some of those traffic calming strategies that can help on what is a residential, there's a residential section of town here that is the historic district that I'm part of. It's the entry to town. You've got tourists walking down the street and seeing huge dump trucks, construction dump trucks every day, driving 45 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, air braking, jake braking. It's terrible. It's not conducive to a living environment. And a tourist environment, and safety is the big issue. I can't cross the street to my mailbox without almost getting killed. I guess I'm still passionate about this 6 years later, and I'm glad that you've got a study that shows some issues. And I'd love to see what the highest speed limit is through that 35-mile-an-hour speed zone, because I see racing down the highway every day by, zooped up cars and motorcycles and you name it, trucks, heading out of town and doing a 1 mile speed, you got a drag strip there. So I'm asking for a number of things for you to consider in addition to moving the speed limits up. And enforcement is an important piece of this too.
Well, I think moving extending the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit is an important piece of this. And I agree with you on that because of the extra development that has happened and will continue to happen up through there.
And Willow, yeah.
There's a lot more going on there than was just a few years ago. The difficulty is it's a wide, flat, straight piece of road, and we have to do something else to get people to realize that they're in a more densely used part of town. So I agree with you on that. What those measures will be, we'll continue to check down the list and see what would be a good starting place or place to continue. And test the effectiveness of that and see if we're headed in the right direction. But we appreciate you continuing to bring this to our attention, and we'll continue to work on it.
Yeah, it's just not me, it's my neighbors as well with kids. I don't have kids yet or grandkids yet. I have kids, but I don't have grandkids yet. But there's plenty of kids that live on the street, believe it or not, you know, in this section of 35 mile an hour.
I just want to let you know that grandkids are great.
One of these days, but you know, I want them to be safe, and even my neighbors' kids to be safe. Any additional things that you can look at in terms of traffic calming that are very effective, other towns in the area have done, like this diagonal lines on the road to create, you know, an awareness, slow down in the road, speed limits, a lot of things. So yes, I appreciate your consideration.
What the data appears to be telling me is that we don't have a real serious problem in the 45 mile an hour speed limit area, but the problem is probably more in the 35.
You're right. It's definitely in the 35 because they're making their way to 45 as quickly as they can going north, and they're not slowing down until they hit the curve.
Okay.
At the Pomeroy's.
I appreciate your input one more time, and we'll continue to chip away at this. Anything else on the traffic results, Scott?
No, that's all I have right now.
Seeing no hands up, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is general election ballot decision. Due to a change in state statute, the select board must now decide whether to list justice of the peace candidates on the back of the general election ballots. But historically, we've already done that, right? Okay, but we have to make an active decision, is my understanding. To continue what we've done historically.
That's what we'd like to see, yes. Neva brought this to my attention a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and she can address it here if she'd like.
Sure.
So, my name is Neva Sheldon, I'm the clerk here in Manchester. Back in 2020, we started mailing ballots for the general election. In 22, we also mailed ballots for the general election. And now the board is being asked whether or not they want to add the names to the back of the ballot as we have historically. The approval needs to be made by this board because it is a local race, but the general ballots or the general election ballots will be mailed to all active registered voters in the town of Manchester. So the state just wants approval that the board understands that those ballots will be mailed.
And your recommendation is for us to do this?
It would be much easier for election officials and voters. If not, we would have to, or the state would send out the ballots for the general election, and then we would have to take requests for JPs. Anyone who would be interested in voting in the Justice of the Peace race would need to call the clerk's office or log in to request a separate ballot. So it's just adding more confusion for the voters. I'm going to go either way. I just need an answer by August 9th so I can let the state know, so I can figure out the other moving pieces.
We still got 3 days.
3 days. Yeah. 3's my favorite number. We're good.
So, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town clerk to notify the state that the select board will allow the justice of the peace candidates to adopt the general election ballot.
Second on the motion, is there a second? Second by Heidi. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3 days to spare.
got several, including, of course, that one that's on there. So sandwich board enforcement, you might have seen or heard, had some complaints, especially on social media about our enforcement of the current ordinance. But basically, we were enforcing the existing ordinance, and people had been placing sandwich boards in the sidewalk or on the entrance to the sidewalk, so inhibiting people from walking. So we just went around and asked the violators, about 10 of them, to move the boards, which they all agreed to. And so the boards are still in place, but not obstructing traffic and not in violation.
And on average, how far do they need to be moved?
3 or 4 feet. And so there was no issues with that. And, you know, this planning commission has got this actually on their agenda, I believe, for the next meeting, which is on the 19th. So they'll be reviewing the current ordinance. Riverwalk update. We met today with the Riverwalk Committee and Jeff Williams and Gordon Black and myself. And so they're actually ready to move forward on the project. We were trying to look at crane movement and logistics, about the giant crane in there, big enough to lift a heavy footbridge. And so what we're looking at is at the end of October, we're gonna close off Green, and they're gonna start building the abutments. With the thought being possibly come springtime, they'll get a crane in there and let.
And that crane would be on the green?
That would be on the green, right? They would have to be restored to its current condition. We worked with the garden club today also on that issue about what landscaping they would like to see back in place and what they would like to see removed. So we're working with them on that.
I'm glad to hear you say that we're working with the garden club. I haven't really heard much about the garden club lately, and it's good to know that they're
Still alive.
Yeah.
Still kicking. They were very involved today in this discussion. Hazard mitigation survey is available. It's posted online. It's also here for anybody who wants to grab one. It's part of our process for a new hazard mitigation plan. And so it's out there till the end of the month, Tony.
Yeah.
And so please complete one and ask your friends to do the same. Finally, there's some FEMA, looks like we're going to receive some FEMA recovery money that was unexpected from the flooding from last July. So basically, we received an approved amount, and the project that we did up in the road and other places, especially there, because that was the big culvert place, remember, came in under budget. And so FEMA is giving us the difference, as long as that money is applied towards flood mitigation type of things like increasing culverts, expanding their size, and that's about $50,000. Thanks to Peter Robbins for keeping that in the fire. And one last comment: Street Fest is scheduled for Friday. The hurricane is not looking too good, so we were going to make a call by Thursday at noon about rescheduling. Well, we had a good one the last one.
Yeah.
I wasn't there.
If we do cancel.
Maybe you should plan to be away.
Yeah.
If we do cancel, we're thinking about being on September 3rd.
Yeah, even though it's end of September, it would be Friday the 13th.
Oh,
So you figure that's gotta be good.
Yeah.
Right?
That's always a good time.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. That's all I have.
Any other business here at the table?
Just really quick, the First Housing Task Force meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 15th at 5:30.
Is there a need for an executive session?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter executive session for the discussion of board appointments, and premature disclosure of which could put the town in a distinct disadvantage.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I just want to, would you anticipate us taking any action coming out of the executive session?
There could be.
Okay. The next meeting is August 20th, but we're going to say we're going to go into executive session with the potential for continuing this meeting when we come out. If we don't take action on the executive session item, our only action will be to adjourn, but I want people to understand that we may, there's a potential that we may be taking some action coming out of the executive session. We've taken a vote on that, so.
Let's do it.